Download and upload more than ever before with an ultra-fast fiber connection. With 3 simple steps, you can be the one with an SLT fiber optic connection. Visit slt.lk.
Tonight, two-way street. Opposition leader expects reciprocation from India.
Since we are geographically in very close proximity, we have a mutual obligation to ensure the security of each other.
Wait until it comes. President Maithripala Sirisena adamant on seeing out his tenure as head of state. Judgment Day. 31 Sri Lankan suspects arrested in Dubai with drug lord Markandure Madush to be produced before a Dubai court. Short-lived bid. Thai princess pulls out of running for premiership. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Saturday, the 9th of February 2019.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanayaka. Now let's get you started with your local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena is adamant in seeing out his tenure as the head of state, insisting that a premature presidential election will not be forthcoming, as called for by some members of the United National Party. Addressing a function of the SLFP today, the president also said that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa advised him not to make the same mistake he did.
An awareness program on the SLFP's restructuring process was held in Polonnaruwa today under the patronage of party chairman President Maithripala Sirisena.
I read in papers that members of the UNP saying that a presidential election will come next, and that is which should come next. The presidential election will be held when the official tenure expires, and that cannot be prevented. But an arbitrary presidential election cannot be held by anyone other than myself. Mahinda Rajapaksa told me last week not to make the same mistake he did. We will resolve all issues constitutionally and hold a provincial council election. Regression of politics equates to regression of the country. Our economic growth is not even 4% because of corruption. It's the same with cricket. Drugs, criminal gangs and underworld have spread everywhere and have become cancerous. It hasn't been 3 months since I took over the police and you see its results. I've started to strengthen the police. Although I gave solutions to these issues over the last 4 years, implementation is not in my hands. At that level, they went in another political direction. Some thought just because they aided me to be president, they should be given a free rein, and that's how the bond scam happened. But I didn't become a thief. A committee was appointed to probe corruption from 2015 to the 31st of December of 2018. There is no need to panic over this if you haven't skimmed. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe reiterates that the door is still open for those who are in favour of working together, leaving room to form a national government. Addressing an event in Galle today, the Premier said that even some members of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna have voiced their approval of the concept of a national government taking roots in the country.
735 million rupees worth of vehicles and equipment were distributed across 93 local authorities covering all provinces towards waste management under the patronage of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today. While addressing the event in Galle, the Premier touched on the mooted national government.
There is no national government at present, and not only us, but even some members of the SLPP have said that creating such a system in the country is good. Various European countries have this system, and it rids the animosity from rural areas while working together. It is the view of our front, as well as myself, that we should be off that stance. We have opened the door to work together.
In the meantime, speaking at another event in Galle, the Premier touched on criticism received by Supreme Court judges from some quarters.
Supreme Court judges are insulted and they're dragged into politics. This results in destroying that institution. If a parliamentarian disagrees with a verdict, that MP can explain it in Parliament but can't hurl personal insults. If there is an allegation, bring an impeachment motion and we will consider it. If someone insults me, I can respond in any way, but Supreme Court judges cannot do that. That makes them an easy target, with the insults decimating the institution. We will not let that happen. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa emphasises the need for strong political leadership in both countries to further strengthen bilateral ties, given that two countries will be facing an election near. Now, he was speaking with regards to India and Sri Lanka. Addressing the huddle organised by media outlet Hindu in India today, the opposition leader added that owing to the geographical proximity of both countries, Sri Lanka and India has a mutual obligation to ensure the security of each other.
The third edition of the Huddle, the Hindu's two-day annual thought conclave, got underway at Bengaluru in India today. The inaugural speech was delivered by opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa at the event.
The communication is such a vital factor that can be the make or break in strengthening our country's relationship. Therefore, an open line of healthy and constant communication should always be the focus even in the coming years. Because we know now the hindsight that the misunderstandings of the 1980s as well as that of 2014 were aberrations that could easily have been avoided. It's key that India and Sri Lanka evolve a mechanism to prevent these misunderstandings from taking place. In their dealings with Sri Lanka, my suggestion to India is that the rule of thumb with regard to India-Sri Lanka relations should be that if the outgoing party had an advocate work in relationship with Sri Lanka, the incoming party should give due recognition to the fact and continue the relationship on that basis. A strong mechanism at the country-to-country level, fully endorsed and supported by each of our governments, should be in place to clear any misunderstanding that may crop up from time to time. National security is vital. In future, it would be crucially important given the destructive forces that operate now and also those that would spring up in the future. It is regional terrorism influenced by international terrorism will greatly affect how we, Sri Lanka and India, look at each other. Since we are geographically in very close proximity, we have a mutual obligation to ensure the security of each other. Often we have heard the Indian leaders emphasizing the need for Sri Lanka to ensure that the Sri Lankan soil is not used by any third party that would pose a threat to India. Similarly, we too would want India to ensure that any threat from any groups operating within Indian soil does not pose a threat to Sri Lanka. No country, in my understanding, can achieve economic stability by disposing of national assets. I would emphasize that the policy advocating sale of national assets inevitably generate tensions among our people. And this has a negative effect on our relations with the country acquiring these assets, whatever that country may be. This has been our experience in the recent past. This does not, however, mean we should not explore joint initiatives for mutual benefits. Foundations of our relationship. We need to harness the quality of our human resources and our rapidly improving technology in our mutual interest. And the will of our leaders will serve as the dominant factor in strengthening our relationship further. And I cannot stress enough on the importance of having a strong leaders at both ends with the will to move progressively in the right direction, particularly with this being an election year in both India and Sri Lanka too.
Now, meanwhile, speaking at the questions and answers session at the event, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa touched on the current political climate of the country. When asked about the upcoming presidential election in the country, the opposition leader stated that he will have to decide as to who will be the presidential candidate in the election.
So when you accepted President Maithripala Sirisena's offer and assumed charge as Prime Minister in October 2018. Perception here was there was not much in it for you or your party. It was a bit intriguing why you would accept it at this stage.
As you asked me, we managed to break the two-third majority in the government. And the marriage that my party and the UNP, the ruling party.
And you think that's a good thing?
I think so.
The new constitution under process is a non-starter, is it?
No, it was a fast, for the last 4 years, they never introduced it. The election year, they want to take the votes. That was a political game.
You have been one of the pillars of the SLFP, but now you are the leader of another party. But you told me yesterday that you're not a member. Could you explain the nuance?
The president of the new party is here in front of me, Mr. Professor G.L. Piris, and he says that I am the leader.
So he's the leader without being a member of the party. I think much of the media didn't know that. He's not a member. He's not a card-carrying member of the party that he leads.
I'm a card-holding member of the SLFP yet.
Would you like to give the Hindu and this audience a scoop about the coming presidential election? Or
unfortunately, I can't contest because so I have to find a good candidate.
So thank you very much.
My candidate will win, whoever I put.
You are confident?
I'm confident.
Now, Minister of Hill Country, New Villages, Infrastructure and Community Development, Palani Digambaram, threatens that a political decision may be forthcoming if the government fails to increase the daily wage of plantation workers up to 1,000 rupees. Minister Digambaram had this to say on the topic when responding to media. We will not discuss the issue of daily wage with the Plantation Owners Association. We are now discussing it with the government. Minister Navin Dissanayake told us that he would give us 940 rupees. They have given us 750 while stripping away all other allowances. We will accept the daily wage of 750 rupees but with all other allowances. We hope that the government would increase this daily wage. Does the government only need the votes of plantation workers? The government has to do something, at least through the budget. We have discussed with the government. We hope for a positive result. If not, we will take a political decision. Now moving on to the latest developments in the arrest of Sri Lankan drug lord Makandure Madush. 31 suspects found to be culpable of drug-related offences are set to be produced before court in Dubai tomorrow. All 39 arrested suspects were subjected to drug tests, and reports say that 8 were released after being cleared by the Dubai police. Meanwhile, houses of several underworld figures who are among the arrested cadre were also searched by police today.
Underworld kingpin Makandure Madush was arrested in Dubai earlier this week during a party, along with several other underworld figures, along with some members of the local entertainment fraternity. Video footage which claimed to be of the party went viral on social media. "39 arrested suspects underwent blood tests, including persons who were charged with possession or being under the influence of narcotics. From the total tested, 31 were confirmed to have been under the influence of narcotics. Drug kingpin Makandure Madush and singer Amal Pereira were among the individuals confirmed to have been used narcotics, and they will be produced before the judiciary of the United Arab Emirates. According to reports, Dubai police have released 8 people who were not under the influence of narcotics. They can be sentenced to a 3 to 10 year jail term as per the drug offences law in the Emirates, and will be sentenced to death if found guilty of dealing drugs. The vehicle used by actor Ryan Van Rooyen, who is also among the arrested, was taken into police custody when it was parked at a tourist resort in Mirissa, and the police also discovered 5.75 grams of Kerala cannabis inside the vehicle. The owner of the resort goes by the alias Sunshine Sudha, who is among the arrested in Dubai along with Madush. Meanwhile, a car belonging to a woman in Dubai who is said to be the paramour of Makandure Madush was taken into police custody from the area of Padukka. 2 persons who were arrested with the car have arrived in Sri Lanka a few months ago from Dubai.
Consultant for UN Women Dr. Swapna Joshi applauds Sri Lanka for being one of the pioneers in gender-responsive budgets, while calling the National Action Plan for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights progressive and welcoming. She made this remark at the launch of the report on women with disabilities and their access to economic opportunities through the lens of gender budgets held in Colombo recently.
We were able to get numbers of beneficiaries disaggregated by sex, number one, and if we had pro-women allocations dedicated only to women-related schemes, we had no data on how many women with disabilities actually benefited from those programs and schemes. So there were several layers of disadvantages that we faced in terms of getting good data. We looked at the budget documents and we looked at schemes and programs that lend themselves to gender budgets or disability budgets or gender and disability budgets. Issues in terms of consistency in the kind of information that we received, and also there was few departments, ministries that we did not hear from. So considering the data gaps and the inconsistency in data that we received, which was not good enough to come to any substantive conclusions or analysis, we thought that we will make certain changes to that particular aspect. The National Action Plan for Protection and Promotion of Human Rights. I think this document is extremely progressive and very welcoming for the fact that for the first time there is a mention of disability budgets and also there is a mention of gender budgets. Sri Lanka has been one of the pioneers in gender responsive budgeting from a thematic focus. So we are talking about gender responsive budgets in gender-based violence. Just very recently, the gender-based violence programmatic action plan has been costed. So that is a very classic example of gender responsive budgeting from a thematic focus lens, and also gender responsive budgeting in rural economic sectors. Like Ma'am mentioned, that 25% budgetary commitment has already been provided for economic programs and schemes across different ministries and departments for empowering women in the rural sector.
We got some of the biggest business tycoons in the country talking about a multitude of things on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, from how to build an economy to developing the tourism sector, business tycoons presented their ideas at a forum titled Towards a Resilient Economy, organised by the National Intellectual Organisation in Colombo recently. Director and chairman of a Valuable One Group, Dhammika Pereira, highlighted that the key to making an effective economic policy in the country is to give a clear GDP target for the next 5 years while giving priority to education. Meanwhile, former chairman of the Pacific Asia Travel Association and chairman of Jetwing Hotels, Hiran Kure, professed that infrastructure development should be done for the betterment of the people.
I think the infrastructure of anything must be focused towards the people of the country. Of course, the tourists will benefit from that, not the other way around. We should never think of developing infrastructure for the tourists. Tourists are beneficiaries in the short term. We are beneficiaries in the long term, our children, children's children. Discipline in our country is at an all-time low. Those are the issues that we as citizens of this country must focus on. If we are to develop this country economically, think of the small things. Uncontrolled development is everywhere. If we try to get approval and build a hotel, we take 3 years.
පොලිසි එකක් හදනවා නම් ඉස්සෙල්ලාම බලන්න වෙනවා GDP growth එක කොයි වගේ level එකකට ගෙනියන්න ඕනද.
It is important to know our GDP levels when making policies. What should be done to have a growth of 8 to 10%? We only have 5 years. There are those who have an issue with the number of ministries. If so, we must freeze all these ministries. One of the other main issues talked about is religion and what should be given prominence. We know 70% are Buddhists, 12.6% are Hindus, 9.7% are Islamic, 7.4% are Catholics and Christians, while 0.3% are of other faiths. We can create a common religious affairs ministry and double the monetary allocation and disperse the funds proportionately.
සල්ලි ටිකක් දීලා අර proportionately allocation එක දැම්ම නම් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ මොනක්වත් එන්නේ නැහැ.
The business tycoon also spoke on the importance of education for the development of the country.
ලෝකේ හැම දියුණු රටක්ම
Every developed country was able to achieve success because of education, nothing else. Each year, 360,000 children are born. Therefore, our goal should be to ensure that at least 50% of these children attend universities, just like developed countries. This will only cost us 60 billion rupees. But the government only allocates 220 billion with a recurrent expense of 180 billion. 50 billion rupees is spent on university education, which means the total is 270 billion. Then 360,000 children are entered into the system, but only 8% emerge from the other side. The reason is the withholding of that 60 billion. This country will not develop without that investment.
He also went on to say that the agriculture sector should be given prominence in job creation.
8.4 million.
8.4 million were employed in 2014, but this has decreased to 7.9 million in 2018 because of adverse weather experienced in the agricultural sector. There has been a shrinkage in the economy because we have tightened the belt instead of building it. If we continue like this, we will experience further stress in job creation. 28% are dependent on agriculture. Therefore, we must give priority to this sector. A policy that is practical, implemented in other countries, and that is understandable to farmers must be implemented if we are to develop this sector.
Chairman and Managing Director of Valuable One Group also touched on the debt situation of the country.
Everyone says we are in debt, which is nothing to panic about. If we take the private sector, banks and financial institutions have borrowed 8,640 billion rupees, while the government has borrowed 5,800 billion rupees. The total deposits in the country amount to 14,400 billion rupees, which is the equivalent of the total GDP. There is nothing wrong with the economic principle. What is needed is to ensure that capital invested where there are higher returns. This year's budget has a total of 2,900 billion rupees, out of which 746 billion rupees is capital. There is a shortage of 120 billion rupees. Just because you didn't spend the capital, debt won't increase. Debt means capital. This is the same principle applied to your own homes. Now, Chairman of the Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited, Dr. Ravi Fernando, recognizes global warming as one of the greatest problems the world has to face and says many countries, including Sri Lanka, are suffering from its repercussions, which are extreme weather conditions. Speaking at a public lecture on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Dr. Fernando also pointed out that given Sri Lanka's policy on achieving 80% renewable energy and 20% fossil fuel, the long-term power generation plan by the Ceylon Electricity Board is in complete contrast.
I'm not necessarily a supporter of having to implement all UN SDGs. I'm a believer that every nation and every business needs to be very focused in terms of what the priorities are and then implement those priorities. Last year, 22 out of the 24 districts were experiencing drought. Does Sri Lanka have extreme weather? Yes, we have. Do we have agricultural productivity loss? Yes. We are now importing rice. International Panel of Climate Justice report, if we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade, the cost in terms of loss will be $54 trillion. The global GDP is between 80 and 90 trillion dollars. So that's nearly half the world's GDP is going to go away if we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade, and we are on 1.15. Sri Lanka needs to focus on 4 goals. If we don't go towards renewable energy, we won't have a Sri Lanka left. Number 2, we should be looking at water. The only international institute that is based in Sri Lanka is the International Water Management Institute, because Sri Lanka has a history of water management. Number 3, reforestation. If you don't have forest cover, you won't have rain, because the rain cycle is influenced by having the right forest cover. The last goal, building infrastructure and promoting innovation in terms of the country. The CEB gave a plan to the government of Sri Lanka for energy strategy. It was called the long-term power generation plan up to 2037. That plan says we will go to 80% fossil fuels and 20% renewable. The commitment we have made is exact opposite of 80% renewable and 20% fossil fuels. Our actions, our strategy and incentives have nothing to do with the policy that we have put in place. And by the way, natural gas is a fossil fuel. If you have renewable energy, your cost will be that much lower. Even though there's a blip in the cost in the short term, the medium term is going to be an amazing benefit.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Welcome back, and it's time for sports. Now, it's not every day that you get a statue built in your honour, and even then, only a precious few are given that accolade. That's not a problem for former England captain and footballing icon David Beckham, as a statue of him is set to be unveiled outside LA Galaxy's stadium next month. The 43-year-old played for the Major League Soccer side for 6 years after joining in 2007, winning back-to-back MLS Cups in 2011 and 2012. He is the co-owner of MLS expansion club Inter Miami, which is set to join the league in 2020. The former Manchester United and Real Madrid midfielder is the first player to receive a statue in MLS history. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.